The day everything shattered. The fluorescent lights of Caldwell and Associates architectural firm hummed overhead like angry wasps. Emma Whitmore stood frozen in the conference room doorway, watching her entire world crumble through the glass walls. Inside, Richard Caldwell, the firm's senior partner, was presenting her Harrison Hotel design to the clients. Except he wasn't mentioning her name. Not even once. Emma had spent 6 months on that project. 6 months of sleepless nights, endless revisions, and pouring every ounce of her creative soul into those blueprints. The Harrison Hotel wasn't just another building. It was a masterpiece of sustainable architecture combined with classical elegance. It was supposed to be her breakthrough moment. And this innovative use of natural lighting, Richard gestured grandly at her sketches, demonstrates why Caldwell and Associates remains the premier firm in Chicago. My team worked tirelessly to achieve this vision. His team, not her vision. His team. Emma's hands trembled as she clutched her portfolio against her chest. She wanted to burst through those glass doors and scream the truth. But she knew what would happen. She'd seen it happen to others who challenged Richard Caldwell. They disappeared from the industry as if they'd never existed. The architect nobody saw. At 32 years old, Emma Whitmore had become a ghost in her own life. She'd graduated top of her class from Cornell University's architecture program, won the prestigious Mercer Design Award, and published papers on sustainable urban development. On paper, she was brilliant. In reality, she was invisible. Her colleagues at Caldwell and Associates walked past her desk without acknowledgement. In meetings, her suggestions were ignored until a male colleague repeated them word for word and received applause. She designed 7 major projects in 4 years, and Richard Caldwell had claimed credit for every single one. But Emma had stayed silent. She'd told herself that patience was a virtue, that her time would come, that hard work eventually got recognized. Her grandmother had raised her with those old-fashioned values after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12. Keep your head down, work harder than everyone else, and goodness will prevail, Grandma Rose always said. Emma was beginning to think Grandma Rose had been wrong. The woman who smiled like a snake. Emma, there you are. Victoria Sterling's voice cut through Emma's thoughts like a knife through silk. Victoria was everything Emma wasn't. Tall, blonde, connected, and ruthless. She joined the firm 2 years ago through family connections, her uncle serving on the board of directors. Victoria had no formal architectural training, but she had something more valuable in this world: the ability to take credit while doing no work. I need you to pull together the Henderson Mall revisions by tomorrow morning, Victoria said, not bothering to look up from her phone. Richard wants to present them at the board meeting. Victoria, I'm still finishing the waterfront project, and the Henderson revisions will take at least 40 hours. Then I guess you'll be pulling an all-nighter. Victoria finally looked up, her smile sharp and cold. Unless you'd rather I tell Richard you can't handle the workload? I'm sure there are plenty of eager graduates who'd love your position. The threat hung in the air between them. Emma knew Victoria was serious. She'd already gotten 3 junior architects fired this year for underperforming. I'll have them ready, Emma heard herself say, her voice sounding far away. Good girl. Victoria patted Emma's shoulder with mock affection. Oh, and Emma, maybe try wearing something more professional tomorrow. That dress makes you look like you're trying too hard. We wouldn't want people getting the wrong impression. Emma looked down at her navy blue dress. It was professional, modest, and she'd saved for 3 months to buy it. But Victoria's words planted seeds of doubt that immediately took root. As Victoria clicked away on her expensive heels, Emma caught her reflection in the glass wall. She saw a woman who'd been slowly erased, day by day, comment by comment, stolen project by stolen project. The final humiliation. The Harrison Hotel presentation ended with enthusiastic applause. Through the glass, Emma watched Richard shake hands with the clients, basking in praise for work he hadn't done. The clients were smiling, clearly impressed. Her design would be built, transforming Chicago's skyline. And no one would ever know it came from her mind, her heart, her late nights, and sacrificed weekends. Richard emerged from the conference room, surrounded by junior partners offering congratulations. His eyes landed on Emma, and for a moment, she thought he might acknowledge her contribution. Instead, he walked directly toward her with a folder in his hand. Emma, These coffee stains on the Henderson files are unacceptable. He held up the folder, and Emma's stomach dropped. There were no coffee stains when she'd submitted those files yesterday. This is amateur hour. I expect better from my assistants. Your assistants? The words escaped before Emma could stop them. Richard, I'm a licensed architect with 4 years of experience. Who makes amateur mistakes? His voice dropped to a whisper meant only for her ears. You're here because I allow you to be here. Don't forget that, Miss Whitmore. Now clean up this mess and get me fresh copies in an hour. Around them, conversation had stopped. Every eye in the office was watching. Emma felt her face burning with humiliation. This was it. The moment where she either stood up for herself or accepted her role as Richard Caldwell's doormat forever. Before she could respond, a deep voice cut through the tension. I believe you're speaking to the architect who designed the Harrison Hotel. The stranger in the expensive suit. Emma turned to find a man she'd never seen before standing in the reception area. He was tall, probably 6'3", with dark hair touched with silver at the temples and eyes that seemed to see straight through pretense. His charcoal suit probably cost more than Emma's monthly rent, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd never been made to feel small. Richard's face shifted through several expressions: confusion, irritation, and then forced pleasantry as he apparently recognized the stranger. Mr. Delaney, I wasn't expecting you until next week. My schedule changed. The man, Delaney, moved further into the office with the easy grace of a predator. I wanted to review the Harrison proposal personally before making my decision. Emma's mind raced. Marcus Delaney. She'd heard that name whispered around the office with a mixture of reverence and fear. He was a billionaire developer who'd made his fortune by age 30, building sustainable communities across the country. Landing a contract with Delaney Development could make or break an architectural firm. Of course, Richard recovered smoothly, his voice oozing false charm. As I was just telling my team, the Harrison Hotel represents our finest work. I personally oversaw every detail. Then you personally chose the photovoltaic glass integration system? Marcus Delaney's eyes never left Richard's face. The one that will reduce energy consumption by 47% while maintaining aesthetic integrity? Richard hesitated for just a fraction of a second too long. Naturally, it's one of my signature innovations. Interesting, because 3 weeks ago, you told my associate that photovoltaic integration was impractical and aesthetically displeasing for commercial projects. Marcus pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and a recording of Richard's voice filled the office. Emma watched the color drain from Richard's face. Perhaps, Marcus continued, his voice calm, but carrying an edge sharp enough to cut diamond. You'd like to introduce me to the actual architect? The one whose thesis on sustainable luxury development I read with great interest 6 years ago. The one standing right behind you, trying to decide whether to speak up or let you continue taking credit for her genius. Every eye in the office turned to Emma. The moment of truth. Emma's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. This was impossible. Marcus Delaney knew about her thesis, had read her work, was calling Richard out in front of everyone. Richard turned to her, his eyes promising retribution. Emma is a valued member of my team, but I assure you. Stop. Marcus raised one hand, silencing Richard mid-sentence. He walked directly to Emma, extending his hand. Emma Whitmore, I presume? I'm Marcus Delaney. I've been trying to contact you for months, but my messages seem to have never reached you. Emma shook his hand, her mind reeling. You've been trying to contact me? I have. Marcus glanced at Richard, understanding dawning in his eyes. Though I'm beginning to understand why my emails went unanswered. Tell me, Mr. Caldwell, do you make a habit of intercepting correspondence intended for your staff? The silence in the office was deafening. Victoria stood frozen by the copy machine, her face pale. The other architects stared openly, witnessing the impossible, Richard Caldwell being challenged in his own domain. Mr. Delaney, Richard began, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. Marcus pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is a formal offer for Miss Whitmore to present her designs directly to my board of directors for the Skyline District project. It's a $3 billion development that will reshape downtown Chicago. I want the architect who actually designed the Harrison Hotel, not the man who takes credit for her work. Emma couldn't breathe. $3 billion. The Skyline District project was legendary. Every architect in Chicago would kill for that opportunity. Richard's face had gone from pale to purple. Now see here. I'm not finished. Marcus's voice could have frozen fire. I've also done my research on Caldwell and Associates. In the past 4 years, this firm has produced 7 award-worthy designs. All 7 can be traced back to Miss Whitmore's portfolio, style, and innovative approaches. Yet she's listed as a junior assistant on your website. He turned back to Emma, and his eyes softened. Miss Whitmore, you have a choice to make right now. You can stay here, continue being erased, continue letting mediocre men take credit for your brilliance. Or you can walk out that door with me and show Chicago what you're really capable of. Emma looked around the office. At Richard, whose expression promised that staying would mean professional suicide. At Victoria, who'd spent 2 years undermining her at every turn. At the other architects who'd watched her be diminished and done nothing. Then she looked at Marcus Delaney, a man she'd just met, who'd done more to defend her in 5 minutes than anyone had in 4 years. The leap of faith. I need to get my things, Emma heard herself say. No. Marcus shook his head. You don't. Anything worth having, you carry with you already. Everything else is just weight holding you down. He was right. Her portfolio was in her bag. Her laptop was on her shoulder. The blueprints, the designs, the ideas, those were all in her head. This office, these people, this building had never been her home. It had been her prison. Emma straightened her shoulders and looked Richard Caldwell directly in the eye. I quit. You can't quit. Richard's voice shook with rage. You signed a non-compete agreement. You'll never work in Chicago again. I'll make sure of it. I'll destroy you. No, Emma said quietly, surprised by the strength in her own voice. You'll try, but you know what? I'm done being afraid of you. I'm done being invisible. And I'm done letting people like you steal my light. She turned to Marcus. Let's go. As they walked toward the elevator, Emma heard Victoria call out. You'll regret this, Emma. You're nothing without this firm. Emma didn't turn around, but she felt Marcus's hand lightly touch her elbow, a gesture of support, nothing more. They stepped into the elevator, and as the doors closed on her old life, Emma saw her reflection in the polished metal. For the first time in years, she saw herself clearly. The woman looking back at her wasn't broken. She was just beginning. New foundations. The ride down to the lobby felt like descending from one world into another. Emma's hands were shaking, adrenaline and terror and exhilaration mixing in her veins like a dangerous cocktail. I can't believe I just did that, she whispered. I can. Marcus leaned against the elevator wall, studying her with those impossibly perceptive eyes. You've been doing the impossible for years, creating beauty in a place designed to crush you. Quitting was easy by comparison. The elevator doors opened to the marble lobby. Emma expected Marcus to say goodbye, to hand her a business card, and send her on her way. Instead, he gestured toward the street. My car is outside. We have a meeting with my board in 2 hours. I hope you don't mind jumping in the deep end. 2 hours. Emma's eyes widened. Mr. Delaney, I'm not prepared. Marcus, and you've been prepared for this your entire career. He smiled, and it transformed his face from intimidating to almost kind. Trust me, but more importantly, trust yourself. You can't quit. Richard's voice shook with rage. You signed a non-compete agreement. You'll never work in Chicago again. I'll make sure of it. I'll destroy you. No, Emma said quietly, surprised by the strength in her own voice. You'll try, but you know what? I'm done being afraid of you. I'm done being invisible. And I'm done letting people like you steal my light. She turned to Marcus. Let's go. As they walked toward the elevator, Emma heard Victoria call out. You'll regret this, Emma. You're nothing without this firm. Emma didn't turn around, but she felt Marcus's hand lightly touch her elbow, a gesture of support, nothing more. They stepped into the elevator, and as the doors closed on her old life, Emma saw her reflection in the polished metal. For the first time in years, she saw herself clearly. The woman looking back at her wasn't broken. She was just beginning. New foundations. The ride down to the lobby felt like descending from one world into another. Emma's hands were shaking, adrenaline and terror and exhilaration mixing in her veins like a dangerous cocktail. I can't believe I just did that, she whispered. I can. Marcus leaned against the elevator wall, studying her with those impossibly perceptive eyes. You've been doing the impossible for years, creating beauty in a place designed to crush you. Quitting was easy by comparison. The elevator doors opened to the marble lobby. Emma expected Marcus to say goodbye, to hand her a business card, and send her on her way. Instead, he gestured toward the street. My car is outside. We have a meeting with my board in 2 hours. I hope you don't mind jumping in the deep end. 2 hours. Emma's eyes widened. Mr. Delaney, I'm not prepared. Marcus, and you've been prepared for this your entire career. He smiled, and it transformed his face from intimidating to almost kind. Trust me, but more importantly, trust yourself. As they stepped onto the Chicago street, Emma felt the October wind cut through her inadequate coat. She'd walked out with nothing but her bag and her talent. No safety net, no backup plan, no guarantee this wasn't all some elaborate mistake. But as she climbed into the Blacktown car, watching Caldwell and Associates disappear behind her, Emma Whitmore made herself a promise. She would never be invisible again. She didn't know it yet, but the man sitting beside her had his own reasons for wanting to take down Richard Caldwell. Reasons that had nothing to do with architecture and everything to do with a decade-old betrayal. And Emma Whitmore, the architect nobody saw, was about to become the center of a story much bigger than she ever imagined. The car pulled into traffic, carrying her toward a future she couldn't yet see. Behind them, in the Caldwell and Associates conference room, Richard Caldwell was making phone calls, pulling strings, and planning his revenge. The game had begun, and this time, Emma wasn't going to lose. Part 3. The Sweet Vindication. The darkest hour. Emma spent the next 3 days in a hotel room that smelled like industrial cleaning products and desperation. The Skyline District presentation was in 48 hours, and she'd never felt more alone in her life. Her laptop sat open on the desk, displaying the designs she and Marcus had created together. Except now every line, every rendering, every brilliant detail felt tainted by the secret he'd kept. She'd been a project, a redemption arc. The daughter of the woman Marcus couldn't save, working for the man he wanted to destroy. How convenient that she'd been talented enough to serve both purposes. Emma's phone buzzed for the 100th time. Marcus again. She didn't answer. She'd blocked his number after the 15th call, but he'd started calling from different phones. She had to give him credit for persistence. A knock at the door made her jump. Housekeeping. Not today, thank you. Emma called out, her voice hoarse from crying and lack of sleep. But the knocking continued, more insistent. Emma Whitmore, I have a delivery for you. Wary, Emma opened the door to find a young courier holding an enormous box. Sign here, please. The box was heavy, and when Emma opened it, she found stacks of documents, photographs, and a handwritten letter on top. Marcus's handwriting. Against her better judgment, she started reading. Emma, I'm not going to call again. I'm not going to show up at your hotel. You asked for space, and I'm giving it to you, even though every instinct I have is screaming at me to fight for you. But I need you to know the truth. All of it. Not because I expect forgiveness, but because you deserve to know who your mother really was. Enclosed are letters Caroline wrote to you over the years. She never sent them because Richard convinced her you were better off without her. There are also documented instances of Richard's abuse, financial control, emotional manipulation, isolation from her family. I have statements from Caroline's friends, medical records showing injuries she tried to hide, and evidence of how systematically he destroyed her sense of self. Your mother didn't abandon you because she didn't love you. She abandoned you because she'd been broken down so completely that she believed leaving was the only way to protect you from Richard's influence. By the time she escaped him, she thought she'd already failed you beyond redemption. I found her 3 years ago, dying in a hospice. She asked me to check on you, to make sure you were okay. When I discovered you were working for Richard, experiencing the same pattern of abuse she'd endured, I made a choice. Maybe it was the wrong choice. Maybe I should have told you everything immediately. But Emma, please understand, I didn't save you. You saved yourself. I just opened a door. Everything you've accomplished, every brilliant design, every moment of courage, that was all you. Your mother's story isn't your story. You're not doomed to repeat her mistakes. You already proved that by walking away. The presentation is yours. The designs are yours. Your future is yours. I'm just grateful I got to witness you reclaiming it. Whatever you decide about us, know this. loving you wasn't redemption. It was resurrection. You brought me back to life, reminded me what it means to believe in something beyond revenge. Yours, if you'll have me. Marcus. Emma's hands shook as she opened the first letter from her mother. The handwriting was elegant, educated, so different from the monster Emma had imagined. My darling Emma, you're 5 years old today. I wonder if you remember me at all. I hope you don't. I hope your grandmother has filled your life with so much love that my absence feels natural, not like abandonment. I left because Richard told me I was poison, that my depression, my weakness, my failures would infect you. And I believed him, because by then, I believed everything he said. He'd spent 2 years systematically destroying every shred of confidence I had. But I want you to know, leaving you was the hardest thing I ever did. And not a day has passed that I haven't thought about you, wondered about you, prayed that you were happy and whole and everything I couldn't be. I love you. I've always loved you, even if I was too broken to show it properly. Your mother. There were dozens more letters, spanning years. Emma read them all through tears, watching the story of her mother's life unfold. A brilliant woman destroyed by a manipulative man who made the agonizing choice to leave her daughter rather than expose her to that same destruction. The parallels were terrifying. Richard had used the same tactics on Emma that he'd used on her mother, undermining her confidence, stealing her work, making her feel invisible. If Emma hadn't walked away when she did, would she have ended up like Caroline, broken, isolated, believing she deserved nothing better? Among the documents, Emma found something else, a full investigation into Caldwell and Associates' business practices, financial irregularities, patterns of intellectual property theft, testimony from 8 former employees, all women, describing the same systematic abuse Emma had experienced. And at the bottom of the box, a flash drive labeled Your Choice. Emma plugged it into her laptop. It contained a complete dossier on Richard Caldwell, everything Marcus had compiled over 3 years. Evidence that would destroy Richard's career, his reputation, his firm. All organized, documented, ready to be handed to the Chicago Tribune. There was a video file titled For Emma. She clicked it. Marcus appeared on screen, looking exhausted and raw. Emma, by the time you watch this, you'll know everything. You'll know that I kept secrets, that my motives were complicated, that I'm far from perfect. He ran a hand through his hair. But I want to give you a choice I never gave myself. Revenge consumed me for 10 years. I let it define me, drive me, hollow me out. And then I met you. And suddenly I remembered what it felt like to build something instead of destroying something. He leaned closer to the camera. This flash drive contains everything you need to destroy Richard Caldwell. Or you can throw it away and move forward without him. Either choice is yours. But Emma, please don't let revenge become your prison the way it became mine. You're bigger than that. Better than that. The video ended. Emma sat in silence, staring at her reflection in the dark screen. She thought about her mother, about Marcus, about the woman she used to be and the woman she wanted to become. Then she made her decision. The conference. The Chicago Architecture Conference was held at the Grand Ballroom of the Palmer House Hilton. Emma stood in the back of the massive hall, watching architects, developers, and industry leaders file in. The room was buzzing with anticipation. Richard Caldwell's keynote speech was the main event, and everyone knew he was planning to announce a major project. Emma was scheduled to present in the afternoon, in a smaller breakout room. The organizers had been surprised when she'd registered as an independent architect rather than under Caldwell and Associates, but they'd given her a slot anyway. She was wearing a power suit she'd bought with the last of her savings, deep emerald green that made her feel like a warrior. Her presentation was loaded on a flash drive around her neck. And for the first time in her professional life, Emma Whitmore was ready to be seen. Emma. A familiar voice made her turn. Marcus stood a few feet away, looking uncertain. He was in a dark suit, impeccably tailored, but there were shadows under his eyes. I wasn't sure you'd come. I almost didn't. Emma's voice was steady, even though her heart was racing. I read everything. The letters, the documents, all of it. And I understand now. Why you did what you did. Why my mother did what she did. She took a breath. Marcus, you were right about one thing. I'm not my mother. Her story doesn't have to be my story. But that means I need to handle this my way. What are you going to do? What I should have done 4 years ago. Stand up and show everyone who I really am. She met his eyes. As for us, I don't know yet. You hurt me. You lied by omission. But you also believed in me when no one else did. That has to count for something. It counts for everything, Marcus said softly. Emma, regardless of what happens after today, I want you to know, being with you, watching you come into your own, it's been the greatest privilege of my life. Before Emma could respond, the lights dimmed. Richard Caldwell was taking the stage. The keynote. Richard looked exactly as Emma remembered, polished, confident, radiating authority. He commanded the stage like he commanded everything else, with absolute certainty in his own importance. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for that warm welcome. I'm honored to be here today to discuss the future of architecture in Chicago. His voice carried easily through the hall. For 20 years, Caldwell and Associates has been at the forefront of innovative design. We've built landmarks, created communities, and pushed the boundaries of what's possible in urban development. Emma felt her jaw clench. The we in that sentence represented dozens of architects whose work he'd stolen. Today, I'm thrilled to announce our latest project, the Millennium Park Extension, a $2 billion development that will add 20 acres of mixed-use space to Chicago's most beloved public area. Behind him, renderings appeared on the massive screen. Emma's blood ran cold. Those renderings looked remarkably similar to her Skyline District plans. Not identical. Richard was too smart for that, but the core concepts were there. The mixed-income housing, the integrated green spaces, the sustainable design elements. Someone had leaked her work to him, or stolen it. Again, this project represents everything Caldwell and Associates stands for, Richard continued, oblivious to Emma's fury. Innovation, sustainability, and intellectual property theft. Emma's voice rang out across the hall, amplified by the acoustics of the massive space. Every head turned. Richard's face went white, then red. Excuse me. Emma started walking toward the stage, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Marcus followed, but she barely noticed. All her focus was on Richard Caldwell, the man who'd stolen from her mother, stolen from her, and was now trying to steal her future. You heard me, Richard. Those designs. They're based on my Skyline District proposal, which you couldn't possibly have access to unless someone in your firm committed corporate espionage. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Conference security moved toward Emma, but Marcus held up a hand. Let her speak. This is about to get interesting. Richard's smile was cold. Miss Whitmore, I understand you're bitter about leaving Caldwell and Associates, but these accusations are ridiculous. My team has been developing the Millennium Park Extension for months. Really? Then you won't mind if we compare documents. Emma pulled out her laptop, connecting it to the AV system before anyone could stop her. Her Skyline District renderings appeared on the screen beside Richard's. Notice anything similar? The vertical garden integration? The mixed-income housing structure? The photovoltaic glass system that you told Marcus Delaney's team was impractical 3 weeks before miraculously incorporating it into your design. The room erupted in conversation. Emma could see architects in the audience comparing the designs, their faces registering shock and recognition. This is absurd, Richard started, but Emma cut him off. Want to know what's absurd? The fact that you've been stealing designs for 20 years, and no one has called you out because they were too afraid of what you'd do to their careers. Emma's voice shook, but with anger, not fear. Well, I'm not afraid anymore, Richard. And I'm not alone. Marcus stepped forward, holding up a folder. Inside this folder are statements from 8 former Caldwell and Associates employees, all documenting the same pattern. Their designs were stolen, their contributions erased, their careers sabotaged when they dared to speak up. We also have financial records showing that many of Richard's award-winning projects were actually created by junior architects whose names never appeared in the credits. The crowd was in uproar now. Conference organizers were trying to regain control, but the damage was done. Architects were standing, shouting questions, demanding answers. Someone started a slow clap that built into thunderous applause. For Emma, not Richard. Richard's face had gone from red to purple. You'll regret this, both of you. I have lawyers. So do we. A new voice joined the conversation. Sarah Chun, the Tribune journalist, stood up from the audience with her recorder visible. Mr. Caldwell, I'm Sarah Chun with the Chicago Tribune. I've been investigating your firm for 3 months, and I'd love to get your comment on these allegations for my expose coming out tomorrow morning." Richard's composure cracked completely. He looked around wildly, as if searching for an escape route, then made a fatal mistake. He lunged toward Emma's laptop, trying to disconnect it. Marcus moved faster, blocking him. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. There are about 500 witnesses here, including multiple cameras. Assault charges on top of intellectual property theft? Your career is over, Richard." Security finally reached the stage, but they were restraining Richard, not Emma. The conference director, a stern woman named Patricia Moore, looked at Emma with newfound respect. "Miss Whitmore, I believe you have a presentation scheduled for this afternoon. Given the circumstances, would you be willing to move it to this main hall? I think everyone here would benefit from hearing what you have to say." Emma looked out at the crowd, hundreds of her peers, all watching her, waiting to see what she'd do. 6 months ago, she would have been terrified. Now, she felt powerful. "I'd be honored," she said. The presentation. 20 minutes later, Emma stood on the same stage where Richard had tried to steal her glory one last time. But this time, her name was on the screen. Her designs, her vision, her voice. The Skyline District project represents a fundamental shift in how we think about urban development. Emma began, her voice clear and confident. "For too long, we've treated affordable housing as separate from luxury development, as if people of different income levels shouldn't share the same beautiful spaces. This project proves we can do better." She walked the audience through every aspect of the design. The vertical gardens that would provide fresh produce for residents, the community centers that would offer job training and childcare, the architectural features that reduced energy consumption while creating stunning visual appeal. It was a masterclass in sustainable design, and the audience was riveted. But Emma didn't just talk about buildings. She talked about vision, about courage, about the cost of staying silent when you're being erased. "For 4 years, I let someone else take credit for my work," she said, her voice raw with honesty. "I told myself it was professional strategy, that I was paying my dues, that my time would come. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of being rejected, afraid of failing, afraid of being seen." She paused, looking out at the crowd. "But here's what I learned. Being invisible doesn't protect you. It just makes it easier for other people to steal your light. So I'm here today, in front of all of you, claiming my light. These are my designs. This is my vision. And I'm done apologizing for being brilliant." The applause was deafening. Architects stood, cheering. Emma saw tears on some faces. Other women who'd been made to feel small, who saw themselves in her story. When she finished, Patricia Moore returned to the stage. "Miss Whitmore, on behalf of the Chicago Architecture Conference, I'd like to formally invite you to serve on our board of directors. We need more voices like yours shaping the future of this industry."